building a unified USB drop payload for Windows, Mac, and Linux, this time on Hak5.
Hello and welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen.
My name is Shannon Morse.
It's your weekly dose of Technolost.
Welcome everybody to this episode of Hak5. We have some super fun stuff that we have been working on today.
For the first time ever on this show in 11 years, there's a Mac in front of me.
Ah! No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure some people out there use Macs, but we have never had a Mac on our show.
I mean,
have we ever?
Paul had a Mac on the show a couple of times in the first few seasons, but we've never really gotten into hacking Macs, which is fine. There's no shame in using a Mac. We just need a cross-platform payload today, and that's exactly what we're going to do, because we have a Windows. Here's my Windows.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Darren this season. He's got
my Mac.
You got a Surface.
My Windows.
You got a Surface and a Mac.
And then I got my Linux.
And you got your Linux. So, what's going on? This is so weird.
I know. So what we're going to do is we are about to venture off onto a pen test engagement. Cool. And I'm very excited to go along with you on that. We can't get into too many of the details about the client and what it's for and all of that. You guys know how it is. But we will be talking about the research that we discover along the way. Yes. And I'm really excited to get into some of the analysis of it. But leading into that, I thought it would be really fun to, you know what, just dev live. Right? Okay. So the idea here is we need to develop a payload for the USB Rubber Ducky that will act as a USB drop that we can litter, say, the parking lot as an example. This is very similar to what was done on first season of Mr. Robot. Yeah. It's a common attack vector. Basically, you take USB drives, you litter them around. Eventually, someone's going to pick it up and be like, ooh, and plug it in.
Right. And usually when you see that done, they're either using a USB Rubber Ducky or they're putting some kind of malware on the actual flash drive. So in our case, we're actually using a USB Rubber Ducky.
Exactly. In fact, I'm just going to break out a brand new one. So
we have our done turkey.
We've got our done turkey, but we're going to be deving our turkey live in many ways.
Oh,
so I'm excited about that. Nah, it's all going to work out in the end. And I feel like this is actually a good example of kind of going over the best practices of what would be, like what this is an actual engagement. So we need to do some, typically we have a little bit more information about our target.
Right.
And one of the first things that we'll want to do is our standard, on any engagement, we're going to do our pre-engagement interactions where we ask the client certain things about the network, like what's in scope, what's out of scope.
Right. Because if the CEO doesn't want you to hack his phone, you want to make sure that you know that ahead of time so you can whitelist his phone.
Exactly. So I'm just going to continue assembling the duck here. So we don't have that luxury in this case because we're kind of going in blind in some ways, and that's just part of this particular operation. The other thing that we'll want to do, and on those interactions, you always want to ask as much as you possibly ask for the kingdom. You're not going to get everything, but it doesn't hurt to ask.
Of course.
After that, the next step is to do your own reconnaissance, right? And use all of the open source intelligence gathering tools at your disposal, whether it's
Netcat or Metasploit or Maltego.
Maltego in particular is a fantastic tool for doing intelligence gathering on an organization.
Absolutely.
Since we're going up kind of more broadly speaking, we don't actually know the details of all of the organizations in this until we get there. So that's going to make things, I don't know, that's why we're developing a payload that will work against any particular operating system, because we don't know who's going to plug in what.
Right.
So
this is also one of the reasons why I know a lot of people always ask, why don't you run this in a VM, blah, 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 blah. And one of the reasons why is because we need the hardware for multiple different operating systems to actually work. So that's why we have multiple different laptops here. Because you want to plug in that USB Rubber Ducky and make sure that it already works no matter what.
And there's your Ducky when it's all assembled. And of course, it just looks like a regular thumb drive, so that's what's going to allow it to blend in. In fact, once we get to the site, I have a good feeling we'll be able to pick up some of these with the clients or the various clients' logos.
Absolutely.
And that's a really fun thing about this. This is the most generic USB case. You probably have one of these that has the logo of something silly.
I remember
and just pull that right off.
Over the years going to CES, plenty of companies would have very similar thumb drives and they would just hand them out.
Yeah.
Expecting you to plug it in with a bunch of like PR stuff on them.
Totally, exactly. And you know, that's a fantastic vector because it does look like what they're expecting it to be.
Yeah.
And so they'll do the bidding for us. And if we craft our payload properly for this, we'll get execution within a second or two at the most. So the tricky part in this is that we don't have that we are skipping the steps of reconnaissance. We are basically trying to cover as many bases as possible.
Right.
Had we done particular reconnaissance and realized like, okay, it's a shop that's standardized on these one brand of like this, I don't know, pick a brand like HP or Dell computers that are all running this one version of Windows or whatever have you, then we would develop our payload specifically targeted for that machine. And we would go out and get a physical machine that is running that, not a VM. You know, VM will work in a pinch, but
of course.
For example, if we were going after an ATM or some esoteric like banking system that uses like hyperterminal or something, right?
Yeah.
Some sort of like dumb terminal that even uses PS2. Well, now we need to get a PS2 adapter because you don't want to get to the site and then find out like go to jack it to USB and find out like
crap, I can't plug it in.
No USB ports because this thing is running OS2 warp.
Right.
Right. The other aspects of that would be, you know, since we don't have the luxury of knowing what our particular target is, we're going to just try to make assumptions that they're probably going to be Windows, Mac, or Linux boxes, and hope for the best.
I think we have a pretty good chance.
Yeah. So this particular payload is going to be really simple, but the trick here is to make it cross-platform. So let's go ahead and get started now that we have a pretty good understanding of where we're going with this.
Okay. So first off, what is the point of this payload? What is it going to do?
Well, I figure, why don't we just go ahead and make a really simple one to open a web page.
Okay.
So on web.txt, I don't know. And this is going to be very similar to most payloads. We're going to do a quick little delay to give the computer a chance to, notice the duck plugged in.
Right.
And then, I don't know, this is Windows, so we're going to do GUI R to pull up the run line. We're going to delay for 100 milliseconds while that GUI element pops up. Then we're going to do string, I don't know, www.example.com, which is always a good one.
Easy.
And then enter. The stupid, simplest payload ever. I'm going to go ahead and write that file. And if I now take the micro SD card reader, I'm going to go over here to my SD card. You know what, let me get rid of all of this stuff on here. I'm done with those payloads. And let me just go ahead and encode this. So I'm just going to use Java, tacjar, encode.jar, specify my input file as web.txt and my output file as, in this case, the root of the SD card, inject.bin. Typical, duck encoding. We've done this before on the show. Eject that, go ahead and unplug that. And so now I'll take that SD card out and I'll just pop that in the duck. Let's go over to this Windows computer here.
Okay.
And so I just plug in the duck and a second later, there we go. I got example.com.
Yay.
Hooray!
It works.
It works. Well, of course it does. It's a Windows payload.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, if I plug it into the Mac now, it's not going to do anything.
Right, because you scripted it for the Windows machine. So how are we going to make it cross-platform with the Mac?
This is where it gets tricky. So if I switch over here to the Mac now, let's see. Hey, this one actually has ports. And have we picked it up over there yet? If I hit the equivalent of Windows key R here on the Mac, nothing happens. However, if you do, well, they call it command space, right? It's the equivalent of GUI space. I get Spotlight, and from here I could actually type in http://www.example.com, and it'll pop up Safari, and there we go. So all we need to do in that case is modify the payload so that in addition to hitting Windows key R, it also does Windows key space, which I know will work because when I test on this Windows box, Windows key R.
It doesn't do anything?
Yeah, it doesn't cause any problems. And I don't believe it's going to matter which order I do this in.
So the Windows machine basically ignores window space, right?
Exactly, and I believe the Mac is similarly going to ignore Windows R. So if I switch back to the Mac here, which is right there, and I hit Command space, and then hit Command R, nothing happens. So that's good because then I can start typing. Hooray. Okay, so that's actually a perfect example of how a lot of times when I'm developing a payload, I will physically do it on the keyboard of the machine.
Oh, as you should, yeah.
Totally. You just take notes.
That's why it's so nice to have the machines here, especially if you know more about your target.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, so what's next?
Well, the next thing then would be to make this cross-platform. So
you're just adding that in?
Back over to my Linux box. Yeah, let's go ahead and before we do our GUI R, let's do GUI space. And then let's add a little delay, just 50 milliseconds.
Okay.
Okay, so now we've done GUI space, then GUI R, and then we type in our thing and hit enter. Great, okay, let's save that and encode it after I plug the SD card into my machine. And there we are, the SD card showed up. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete the inject.bin off of it. And let's encode that new one. And there it is, and I'll safely eject. Great, lather, rinse, repeat. Pop it out, and pop it back in our duck.
Okay.
Okay, now let's try it on the Mac.
Okay.
And I'll pop it into the USB port that it actually happens to have. And it worked.
That's funny.
Kind of.
Keyboard assistant.
Keyboard assistant, you noticed that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to that and see what actually happened. Sorry, this display. And I'm gonna go ahead and close that with Command Q. Hey, it's keyboard setup assistant because it was like your keyboard cannot be identified and is not usable until it is identified, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, and it wants you to like hit continue and like type a couple of keys and such to like figure out what kind of keyboard it is because this is a Mac and it's all like weird and stuff. So
that's funny.
Brings up a good point. Let's go back.
Is that their way of like keeping rubber duckies from working?
No.
It still works? Well, obviously it did.
Obviously. Watch this. So I need to remember which of these buttons is which computer. Nope, wrong one. Got it? Anyway, so on this Linux box, I'm gonna go ahead and just plug the duck into my computer.
Okay.
Now obviously, you're gonna see that it did, you know, it did GUI space, it did GUI R, and then it typed that and hit enter. And of course, that's not a bash command, so bash is all like, dude, what are you doing? Right? You may also notice over here in dmessage, which I've been watching, that new full-speed USB device, yada, 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 product is a HID keyboard, manufacturer's Atmel, and we have, if we do ls USB, oops, we have a vid and a PID for that Atmel thing. Okay, so this is the vendor ID and the product ID. Okay, so you know how like MAC addresses, the first 3 octets of a MAC address, whether it's Wi-Fi or Ethernet, whatever,
are the same?
Well, it's the vendor.
Yeah.
Right, so for instance, you know, you could pull out a Wi-Fi pineapple and you could look on the bottom of it and it would say 00C0CA 8F7A26.
Okay.
Someone will get this eventually and be like, that's my pineapple on the show. And the first 3 octets of it specify the actual, you know, vendor who makes it for us, which is awesome.
Okay.
Right? And you can similarly do sort of the same thing with all USB peripherals. They all have a vid and a PID, or a vendor ID and a product ID, which specifies who the manufacturer is and then what product it is. As an example, where is it? Is there that keyboard back there?
Yeah, it's back here.
Let's see that. So this is a Logitech K400R. So it would have a vendor ID that would be, you know, some hex characters that would be specific to Logitech.
Okay.
And then the product ID would be some hex characters that's specific to this K400.
Okay.
Right? So if we wanted to emulate a K400 Logitech keyboard, all we have to
change the product or the vendor ID?
Yes, change the vendor ID and the product ID.
Okay.
And that's pretty simple to do with the USB Rubber Ducky. There's versions of the firmware from the community, specifically Midnight Snake, who's made some amazing contributions that allows you to change those vendor IDs and product IDs.
So are you saying we should change this to an Apple vendor ID?
Yes, because if we do that, then it's like, oh, it's one of my Mac keyboards. I love those.
That's funny.
So
will the pop-up not happen if you change it to that vendor ID?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're going to do now.
Okay.
And I still don't have it right. Figured it out. There we go. It's this one. I'm going to go over to my firmware directory under images. Okay, so I have copies of all of the different firmware here. And the one that I actually want to use is quite simply OSX.hex, right? And so this is just a version of the Ducky firmware which works exactly like the vanilla one. It just happens to have the vendor ID, product ID, of an Apple keyboard so that it doesn't cause that
that's
problem.
So funny. Okay.
Simple, simple. So in order to do that, we're just going to do sudo dfu-programmer and then erase. Okay, so in order to first do that, I need the USB Rubber Ducky to be into DFU programming mode.
Right.
So DFU is
That's what, holding down and plugging in at the same time?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, DFU is basically the way that Apple devices can have their firmware written. It's the bootloader, kind of like you might have Red Boot or U-Boot or your BIOS, whatever have you.
Of course.
So I'm going to hold down the button, plug it in. In fact, I'll switch to the screen so you can see. Dang it. I'll switch to this screen so you can see the message on the right. So this time, instead of plugging it in and getting product keyboard, there we go. It says product is the AT32UC-DFU manufacturer Atmel.
Got it.
And when I do, LS USB, I'll get a different thingy. So here, we'll just go ahead and actually erase the firmware that's currently on it. Oops. I have to specify the chip. You know what? I've done this before, and here's an awesome bash tip. Control R. And if I type erase, and nope, that wasn't it. Control R, and it is AT32. There we go. Right, I don't want reset, I want erase.
If you know you've done it recently, you can also use history.
You're right, I can. Okay, so I've done that. In fact, I'll use history, and I will grep for the AT32UC3B1256 because we love chip numbers. There we go. And this is actually the flash command that I want, which is sudo dfu-programmer, which is an awesome tool. You can just sudo apt-get install it. And then actually it's this one, because I want OSX.hex.
Yeah.
Right. So let's take a look at that command again, because you see I've got all of those different firmwares in this directory. And so what I'm running is, as root, the DFU programmer utility saying, hey, this chip right here, what I want you to do is flash the firmware, and I want you to suppress the bootloader memory, and I want you to write OSX.hex.
Cool.
So I do that, validates, it's good to go, and then lastly, we just reset it. So watch over here on the right side where we have where we're watching the log file, and we'll do a reset, which basically restarts it.
We should see HID keyboard. Yep. HID keyboard, Apple Inc. Awesome.
There we go. So this time, haha, Apple Inc. And when I LS USB, you'll notice that the vendor ID and product ID has changed to 05AC2227, and it shows up as an Apple.
Oh, that's so funny.
Right?
Okay, so this time, you want to try it again?
When I switch to the right computer, there we go, and I plug the USB Rubber Ducky into this Mac.
Oh, yes.
There we go.
No pop-up.
No pop-up.
How cool.
Yeah, and the Windows machine doesn't care either. You know, I can just go ahead and, here, I will, I don't feel like, Shannon, I don't feel like plugging in the HDMI, so I'm just going to hold it up so everybody can see. But essentially, we'll go ahead and plug in our duck.
Nice.
There we go.
So it didn't hurt a thing on the Windows machine.
Didn't hurt a thing on the Windows side.
Okay.
Doesn't hurt a thing on the Mac side.
So we have our Windows machine set up so that runs on there. We have it set up so it can run on Mac. What if somebody has a Linux machine? Specifically, I'm going to assume that most people are probably using Ubuntu, because that's the most popular one.
Distro Watch would agree with you.
Oh, really? Okay.
And to everybody else watching at home, please leave in the comments your favorite Linux distribution and why Ubuntu with Unity is the worst and so lame, and you're lamer for it, and you're not KRAD Ultra E-Read.
Oh, please. The only reason you don't like it is because you're old. All
right, fine. So we're going to go ahead and update this payload to also work in Linux. I say Linux, I'm kind of cheating in this because it's obviously not going to work if you're running KDE because you're cool, or if you're running XFCE on Gen 2. And awesome to you. But let's just take a look at what we can do to make this a little bit better. So I'll go ahead and pop the SD card back in the computer while we update this payload. Let me get back to my Ducky encoder directory and nano that web file that we've been working on. And basically what I'm going to want to do is, before any of these key combos, GUI space for Mac or GUI R for Windows, I'm going to do Alt F2. And then we'll do a little delay 50 like we like to do. And the last update that I want to do to this script actually is because this GUI R may actually put an R for some reason on your Linux box, I'm going to go ahead and after that GUI R, let's see, we'll do another delay 50 just for fun, and we'll do backspace just in case it had actually typed the R, right?
Okay.
So all this is going to do is, you know, right here, we're just going to pull up basically the equivalent of the run line,
okay.
right? So if I hit Alt F2, oops, Alt F2 on mine, I'm going to get enter a command. You're going to get something different because you're not running GNOME 3.
Right.
I'm running GNOME 3 because it's awesome. Check out this window managing awesomeness.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. And then we'll do our GUI space for Mac, and then GUI R, and then backspace, and then run our string. And actually, you know what? This entire time we've been going to example.com, which I'm sure is a fantastic website. But let me just SSH over to a server, and we'll create something. You know what? I don't actually want to give away the server that we're using because we're going to be using it on this engagement. So forget what I said. We're going to use
Hak5.
You know what? Here's what we're going to do. goo.gl. And I am going to shorten a URL. I am going to shorten example.com. And I'll hit copy. Fantastic. I've got a copy of that. The reason that I want to do this is because you see I have 0 clicks on it so far. I'm going to hit this and say analytical data. Right? We're going to come back to that in just a second.
Cool.
Now, when I come back to my script, I'm going to go ahead and paste that. I'm going to get rid of the S to save a character because it doesn't matter. And I'm going to just save that file and lather, rinse, repeat.
Did you just say the S doesn't matter?
Yeah. You know why? Because they're going to add it back and it's going to make my payload run faster. And I don't care about the security of it when I'm hacking a bunch of random machines.
I guess the browsers will add it back, so it doesn't matter.
Well, Google will, because when you hit them on HTTP, they're going to be like, oh, you hit the wrong site. So yeah, you're right. Potentially this attack could be man-in-the-middled. The hack could be hacked. Fantastic. Please do that. All right. And yeah, let's lather, rinse, and repeat that. So I've got my file there. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it so I've got positive confirmation that it has been, whoops. And we'll encode it again. So Java, tacjar, encode, input files, web, output file is /media, yada, 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 inject.bin. Looks good. Eject. Great. So now, I don't know, pick a host. I guess we'll just stick with, oh, no, we'll try it on
my machine?
Try it on your machine. So let me play past the HDMI cable because we have 4 laptops on the set.
Past the HDMI.
Da, 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 da. Hey!
Nice. It worked.
Right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Can I get my HDMI back?
I guess.
I know, I need to continue showing this.
Here you go. Okay, so now we know that it works on the Linux machine. Does it still work on both of these two?
Yeah, sure. Let's try it on the Mac again just to make sure. But that shouldn't hurt anything. Let's plug it in again on the Mac. And bloop.
Cool.
Works.
Hooray!
Hooray! And then, of course, on the Windows side, I will let you just go ahead and there you go.
Okay.
Here's the duck.
Okay. Plug this baby in.
Wahoo! Example.com.
It works.
It works.
Yay!
And more importantly, if I now refresh over on this screen, let's go ahead and do a Control R. Hey!
Dude!
We have clicks.
Awesome.
Right? And we can see the browsers, you know, Chrome and Safari, and the different platforms.
It separates them out for
Windows,
you.
Mac, and hey, X11.
What is it? Oh, is that the Mac?
No, X11 is the Linux window manager.
Oh, that's the Windows thing. Okay.
Yes, until System D eats it. I know it's not System D. I just can't remember the name. Wayland.
Wayland.
Yes.
Ugh.
I'm not rolling my eyes. I love X11 and Wayland and System D. And
okay,
Emacs.
cool.
So
now that we know that it's cross-platform, it's working everywhere, we're set, right?
basically, there wasn't any pre-engagement. We don't have the ability to do recon.
Yeah.
We weren't able to target. Well, we targeted by saying all three major platforms. Our research was essentially saying, let's imagine that they're in the most generic state.
Okay.
Especially this Windows one, it's going to work on anything from like Windows 98 and above with the browser installed.
Okay.
So then we wrote the payload, we encoded it, we tested it, lather, rinse, repeat. We've optimized it by switching the firmware out.
Right.
We're ready to deploy.
Awesome.
So that right there is just a quick little overview on kind of the ducking workflow, as it were, which is also outlined in my fantastic book, which you can get at the Hack Shop.
And I edited. Yes. You're welcome. Because if I didn't, there would be tons and tons of typos.
You know what we're doing next?
What?
Making lots and lots
of duckies.
Oh, with that, we'll be right back. Going to take a quick moment to thank our awesome sponsor, Domain.com, for supporting us all of these years, and remind you guys that when you have that brilliant idea, just like Shannon and I do, we go to Domain.com first and we register that awesome name and using the domain discovery system at Domain.com, and their very simple checkout process makes it a breeze to bring that idea to reality and get your website up and online in no time flat. And get this, the guys over at Domain.com, huge fans of Hak5 and you guys, so we have a special coupon code just for you. It's HAK5, and it saves you 20% at checkout. And if you don't need a domain name in this very moment, you can still tweet them at Domain.com and say, hey, thanks for supporting Hak5 all of these years. Thank you for believing in us, and we really appreciate it. So when you guys think domain names, think Domain.com.
We have officially made one duck.
One cross-platform ducky.
This is going to get us so far in our pen test.
No, it is not.
No.
It is a numbers game.
Duck. It is a numbers game. We're probably going to have to make a lot of ducks.
330.
To make sure at least one of them gets plugged in.
We need 330 ducks.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's going to take a long time, dude.
Ducking A.
How?
So, you know what we're going to do? We're going to bring back our good old friend Chirpy.
Chirpy! I remember Chirpy.
Yeah, this right here.
From back in the day when we did that manually.
Yes, this is a USB and micro SD card duplicator.
Oh gosh.
And in fact, up until, I forget at what point we changed our manufacturing process, every single duck was flashed and what we call chirped, the payload. Oh my gosh, there are actual payloads taped to the top of this. There are micro SD cards. In fact, there are cards in here, but
we should probably find out what's on those.
Yeah, we really should. But yeah, every single one was flashed by hand.
Yeah.
And oh man, we are going to be sitting in front of this
Just
thing.
like we used to, well, I used to solder every single battery pack.
Exactly. Every Wi-Fi Pineapple Mark 1. And Mark II.
And Mark II, yeah.
And Mark II. If you have a Mark II and it came with a battery pack, they were soldered by hand by snubs.
Stupid battery packs. Okay, so we're just going to plug in like 20 of these at a time and let it chirp away, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it goes beep, beep, beep when it's done, so
hence the name.
Chirpy.
Chirpy.
Otherwise, you know, CP inject.bin to /media/ whatever.
Yeah.
And just sit there with an SD card.
All day long. You might prefer that if you work for some company and you get paid hourly. Just saying.
I've done weirder stuff as a sysadmin. Don't ask me about my relationship with Cat5.
All right.
If you have a relationship with Cat5 you'd like to share.
Oh, that's awkward.
No, Pixar didn't happen. You can just leave those in the comments.
So I think that's about it for our segment, right?
Yes.
Is that everything?
Indeed. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys think. This is actually surprisingly the first that I've seen payload that is completely cross-platform. I say completely. We're fudging it a little by saying Unity, Ubuntu, but whatever. Okay,
we
it's
probably
still
won't
going to
get
cover
a lot of those hits anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, most of the people at the place where we're going are most likely going to be Mac and Windows people anyway.
Yeah, I'm guessing mostly Mac.
Oh, I'm looking forward to also debuting the research in May.
Me too. Yeah, that'll be really, really fun. I can't wait to do that.
Yeah, Down Under.
Awesome.
We will be speaking in Australia, Shannon and I. So look forward to more details on that. And hey, you know what? I'll be there.
You'll be.
I'll be in the
Australia.
region.
Oh,
yeah.
yes, you will.
I'll be in the whole Southeast Asia part.
Don't do that.
Why? What is wrong with this? Is this a hack on, hack off? I don't know. Was that bad?
Looked weird.
So, okay. Whatever, Shannon. We take podcasting seriously.
Yes, very seriously.
But if you're in the region of the world between China and Australia, head over to hackacrosstheplanet.com because I'll be around for a little bit hacking across the planet. For real.
Yay, Hack Across the Planet. I'm glad we're bringing that back. It's going to be super cool. And
oh yeah, it's going to lead into a fun new series on season 22. Can you believe we're coming up on season 22?
I know. Yeah, we're a weird podcasting group where we do 26 episodes per season because we pretend to be a TV show. Right, Darren?
Oh my gosh, that means that near the end of next season, we're going to have episode 2222.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, that's a palindrome.
Cool. Yeah. Well, of course it is. Also, we don't have a Technolist photo of the week this week or a giveaway, so if you guys have pictures that you want to share with us, use the hashtag. Which hashtag are we using? Hak5? I think it's Hak5. Hashtag HAK5 to share your photos with us of your favorite Technolist. We would love to see them, and we will give away one piece of awesome gear from the Hack Shop every single week for our favorite pictures. And you can share those with us over Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. We check all of them, so we love seeing your photos. Thank you for sending them in.
And if you want to stalk us on social media, you'll find the links to all of our places, including our snappy Snapchats, over on hak5.org. Just scroll down until you see our bright, shining faces.
And don't forget about Hack Shop, hakshop.com. That's where you can find all the goodies.
Get yourself a duck.
Yes, you can get yourself a duck.
With all of that, I'm Darren Kitchen.
I'm Shannon Morse.
Trust your Technolust. I don't know why I just punched some invisible thing.
Quack, quack.
I don't know why I just punched some invisible thing.
Invisible baby. You punched an invisible baby.
No, those go in the overhead bins.
What were you punching?
I don't know, it's just like...
I can put different things there that you're punching, and you won't know about
like
it
Pikachu?
until Oh, no, you can't punch Pikachu.
If you only knew.
You could punch Clefairy, though. Clefairy's pretty annoying. Like, no, just don't.